All right, let's talk about one of the trickiest and, let's be honest, most painful parts of any project: managing the money. We're going to dive into how modern teams are moving away from those rigid, old-school budgets and embracing a much more flexible, agile way to get things done without breaking the bank.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You start a project with a perfectly good budget, and then somewhere down the line, the costs just balloon. It is a massive headache for absolutely everyone involved. So the real question is, how do we stop this cycle? And look, this isn't just some small annoyance. It's a huge, persistent challenge that has torpedoed projects for decades. If you get the budget wrong, you can sink the whole ship before it even leaves the harbor. That's exactly why getting a handle on cost management is so critical.
So what exactly are we talking about when we say project cost management? Well, at its core, it's really just the playbook. It's the set of rules and processes you use to plan, guess, and control your costs, all with one goal in mind: finishing the project inside that approved budget and avoiding those nasty cost overruns. Now, when it comes to this playbook, there are really two completely different schools of thought. You got the traditional way, the plan everything down to the last nail method. And then you have the newer, more adaptive, agile approach. Let's put them side by side. This slide really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The traditional approach over on the left is all about creating this perfect, detailed blueprint on day one and then sticking to it no matter what. But Agile, on the right, starts with the assumption that things will change. So its goal isn't to perfectly predict the final price tag, but to deliver the most possible value for the money you actually have. It's a huge shift in mindset. Okay, so how in the world does Agile pull this off? Well, it all starts by basically throwing out the old way of estimating work in hours or days. Instead, they use a really interesting idea called relative estimation. And they do this using something called story points. Now, this is key. A story point is not a measure of time. You have to get that out of your head. It's a relative unit of effort. It's a single number that wraps up how complex a task is, how much we don't know about it, and just the raw amount of work involved. And here's what that looks like in the real world. A team will take a simple task they all understand really well, like building a basic login feature, and they'll call it a 3. That's their baseline. From then on, every other task is just compared to that. Is the add to cart feature a little bit bigger and more complicated? Okay, maybe that's a 5. Is integrating a whole new payment system way, way, way harder? That's a 13. See? It's all about relative size, not hours. This little analogy right here is the absolute best way to understand the next piece of the puzzle. If story points tell you the total distance of your project's journey, then you need some way to figure out how fast you're traveling. And in the world of Agile, that's called velocity. Team velocity is super straightforward. It's just the average number of story points a team gets done in one of their work cycles, which is usually a 2-week sprint. And again, this isn't about judging how hard they're working. It's a real data-driven number that tells you what that team can predictably deliver sprint after sprint. And here's the beautiful part. You don't guess your velocity. You measure it. You look at what the team actually completed in their last few sprints, you average it out, and you get a reliable number. So for this team, their stable, predictable speed is 28 points per sprint. That's a fact, not a guess. Okay, so we've got story points to measure effort and velocity to measure speed. So now let's connect all this back to the money. Let's see how these ideas build an actual budget, one that's based on paying for real delivered results, not just a paper plan. First things first, you figure out the team's fixed cost for a single sprint. So if the team's total cost, salaries, benefits, the whole shebang is, say, $56,000 a month, and a sprint is 2 weeks, well, that's half a month, the cost per sprint is a simple, fixed $28,000. Easy enough. Now we connect that cost to the work they're actually doing. We know a sprint costs $28,000, and we know from our data that this team produces 28 story points of value in a sprint. You just do the math. That means each story point effectively costs $1,000. And here is where it all comes together. Now you can make a reliable forecast based on real data. If you know the whole project is about 280 story points and your team's velocity is 28, you can predict it'll take about 10 sprints. At $28,000 a pop, your initial forecast is $280,000, and there was no guesswork involved. But here's the absolute game changer. You don't just hand over that full amount on day one. With Agile, the funding is incremental. A sponsor might say, Okay, here's enough money for the first 2 sprints. Then, after 4 weeks, everybody pauses, looks at the real, tangible value that was delivered, and then they make a conscious decision to fund the next batch of work. This process puts an incredible amount of power and flexibility back into the hands of the people paying the bills. They can keep going as planned, sure, but if things are getting a little tight, they can reprioritize and say, you know what, let's cut these less important features to stay on budget. Or even better, they can stop the project early if they realize, hey, we've already gotten enough value. It's the ultimate off-ramp for runaway projects.
Okay, but projects never go exactly to plan, right? So what happens when you're up and running? How do you control costs and adapt when reality inevitably hits?
The Agile philosophy here is totally different from the old way. Instead of yelling at the team to work faster to try and meet some flawed, outdated plan, you adjust the one variable you actually can control, the scope. You use real-time data to decide what's most important to finish within the budget you have. This lets you ask a much, much better question. Not, are we on schedule, but are we getting good value for the money we have spent so far? And to answer that, we can use a really simple but powerful little metric. This metric is called the Cost Performance Index, or CPI. All it is a simple ratio. It compares the value of the work you've actually finished, that's your earned value, to the amount of money you've actually spent, your actual cost. So as you can see in the example, a CPI of 0.893 has a very clear meaning. For every single dollar we've spent, we've only earned about 89 cents worth of planned value. And knowing that number right now allows you to ask the most important question of all. If this trend keeps up, where are we headed? We can actually use that CPI to forecast the future and avoid any nasty surprises. This chart just makes it crystal clear. If our current cost efficiency continues, our project is no longer heading for that initial $280,000 forecast. The new forecast, which we call the estimate at completion, is now over $313,000. And the most important part? This isn't a surprise that hits you at the end of the project. It's an early warning signal that lets everyone make smart, informed decisions today. Which really brings us back to the fundamental question. The Agile approach to all this suggests that real project success isn't about having a crystal ball and making a perfect guess up front. It's about building a system that can measure reality, adapt to what's actually happening, and consistently make the smartest, most value-driven decisions every step of the way.